Hi guys, Mary's here. In today's video I'll show you how to paint complex patterns using a stamp, wings with a glowing effect, white fabric making sure it doesn't look washed out, sharp edge highlights on armor, and a few other techniques. We'll be doing this on loads of changes models. Let's start from the point where the base colors have been applied using an airbrush. First up is the stamp technique and creating patterns with its help. For this you will need a nail art stamping stencil, which can be purchased from dedicated websites or other shopping platforms. There are tons of patterns available, so you have plenty to choose from. Barbara tested this with acrylic paints, but they didn't work well. For this trick, you will need oil paints. The oil paint must be thinned with turpentine, applied to the stencil and the excess removed. Then you press the stamp onto the model. The silicone material and shape of the stamp allow it to adjust to the mini surface. If the imprint doesn't come out as you like, you can easily wipe it off with turpentine and try again. Barbara let the pattern dry for a few days before continuing with shading the cloak. For the cloak, Barbara specifically asked Nicola for pastel colors without any pure white highlights. Barbara was inspired by how snow appears in the shadows, using various shades of blue. Nicola's work with the airbrush was treated as the base layer of shadows, so Barbara's job was primarily focused on applying light, including touches of pure white. In more illuminated areas, Barbara added yellows to the whites, blending the paint to gradually reduce its intensity. This created a smooth transition into the airbrushed colors. To make the blending process easier, she also incorporated some shadow colors, mixing purple and blue with the white paint directly on her palette, allowing her to create those seamless transitions. A quick trick for painting certain elements is to apply a wash of dark paint mixed with a large amount of turpentine into the recesses, and then use the airbrush technique to bring out the highlights. It's essential to let the turpentine evaporate for about 15 minutes before dry brushing. Otherwise, the paint may mix and the brush will no longer stay dry. Returning to the dried stamp pattern, Barbara uses a thin brush to create light reflections on the most raised parts of the cloak. If the stamp didn't fully cover an area, you can touch it up with a small brush. To darken the pattern, you can apply a well-thinned glaze over the design. Second model. The wings are perfect for Barbara's favorite technique, applying a wash that settles into the recesses. On the black sections of the wings, she applies a mixture of yellow hues. If the result isn't satisfying after drying, you can repeat the process to increase the color saturation. Then Barbara adds blue and pink tones to the top sections. For the armor, Barbara likes to start by applying a dark color along the edges to create separation between surfaces and deepen the shadows. Then she applies the lightest highlight color, adding mid-tones and blending them together. When working with oils, it's essential to apply the lightest color first, so it retains its brightness without getting dulled. To finish, she applies a wash of a different color to further enhance the armor's details. last model. Barbara often uses the technique of washing exclusively with oil paints. To achieve the right consistency, she dips the brush into thinned paint and then into turpentine. This method allows the paint to flow effortlessly over the surface. You can play around with colors. Just because you start with white doesn't mean you can't add other shades like pink. In fact, she returns to white at the end. The airbrush work underneath remains visible, and this technique simply enriches it with additional hues. To create contrast and emphasize highlights, Barbara applies dark navy near white areas. Then, from the top, she adds a turquoise wash, which flows down and settles at the bottom, blending into the navy. She also adds other colors to further diversify the composition. When the paint has dried, Barbara uses a white brush to apply dry brush on the feathers. If the wash has spread too far, she repeats the previous steps to correct any mistakes. She adds a dark dry brush on the tips of the feathers. On the white base coat, other colors remain more saturated. So, when Barbara applies pink, it really stands out. Of course, she does this on previously dry paint. To finish, she adds a touch of navy dry brush. For the armor, she applies a wash into the recesses and leaves it to dry for several days. The model's armor features a large stone, and the goal is to make it appear as though it's glowing from the inside. To achieve this effect, we can draw inspiration from the photo of the stone with inverted colors. Where there would normally be shadows, now there will be light. So apply a light wash into the recesses of the stone and wait for it to dry. Next, it's time for dry brush on the surface. Barbara blends several light colors: white with yellow, green, blue, and purple. All the colors are lighter than those applied with the airbrush, but the airbrush work isn't covered. It just highlights the light sources. Once the stone is dry, Barbara adds more light to it. You can see that it really looks like painting with inverted colors. She applies an oil paint base coat to the edges of the armor. The paint shouldn't be too thin here, or it will spread too much. Using a thin brush, she adds lines to the stones to create details and then continues blending more colors. She also highlights the raised areas on the face, blending the paint into those spots. The eye sockets will glow yellow-orange. Finally, she applies thinned paint into the recesses, and black tips are touched with a lightened blue to complete the effect. and have a look with before and after comparison. And have a look with before and after comparison. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked today's video, don't forget to press the like button, and if you're new and want to see more of our videos, don't forget to subscribe our channel. And of course, if you want to upgrade your army, check out our store in the link down below, and there you can buy really cool 3D printed models. See you next time!